G'day, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Scouting Australia podcast, powered by Australian Property Scout Buyers Agency. I'm your host, Sammy Gordon, and guys, today we're back in the studio for another Q&A. It's been a little while coming here. Big Jimmy has been overseas for a little while. He's been on his escapades across the world, flaunting the silver dog all across the board. But the silver dog, he's back, mate. He's back on Australian soil. How are you, mate?
Great to have you back. It's good to be back. It is good to be back, Sammy boy. And just looking out the window here in Melbourne, it's definitely a far cry from the sangria of Spain. But it's good to be home. And to see your mug. I mean, the vista in Spain was a lot better than seeing your big schnoz. But it's good to be back on the Australian
on your screen there, mate. You're just looking at your own monster schnoz.
It's good to be back on the show. How you been?
Great to be back. I've been well, mate. I've been well. I've been looking forward to another Q&A, mate. There's been a lot of people writing in. We've got a big bank of questions.
We do.
I believe you picked out your kind of top 5 to run through today, mate. So, man, I'm excited. I know we're both tight on time today. We're going to punch out a nice, solid, quick Q&A today.
We are going to punch out the Q&A. And for all of our listeners out there, the Q&A, Sammy, first potty of the month, generally, we try and get the Q&A. So keep your questions coming in. Any questions at all about anything got to do with investing or how Sam looks after his hair, anything about his training tips, probably don't follow that. But any tips or any questions, we will gladly tackle the big issues here on the show. So
actually, Jimmy, you know what, mate? I'm going to cut you off. I've got a question first up. This is something to think about. No, mate.
He couldn't resist.
Just yesterday, the interest rates went up, mate. Again, 12 raises. We're now at 4.1%.
Yes.
So we're up 4% interest rate percentage, right? Like a 4%, which is huge.
Correct.
Since I think it was May last year. So we've had even a 13-month run. We're up 4%.
Correct.
Which is unprecedented. It's monster. What are your thoughts, mate? What's your take on it at the moment?
You actually stole my thunder because that was my little curveball.
You've never had thunder.
Hit you between the eyes for the first question, because everyone I've been speaking to in the last day or so has been asking, what does the bull shark think about the interest rates? Apparently you got a hit on the RBA governor. So for all of the listeners out there,
Phil on speed dial. I was blowing him up.
For all of our listeners out there, there is a lot of nervousness. There's a lot of trepidation about what's happening. Serviceability is a big issue, but also the outlook of the property market. So tell us, Sammy, you being at the front line, the expert in the space, what's your gut feel? What's your thoughts about this latest rise?
Mate, I think it's a funny one. When you look at the current scenario and the current situation, you think it would be a precursor to the market crashing, right? And I know a lot of people kind of have that on their mind and they're very wary and worried at the moment about the market. But it was funny, man. I listened to, there was a little live, like Insta Live or something last night. I was watching with Marky Burris and Tom Panos. You know, the two of those boys having a chat about it. And it was funny because we're kind of looking at it from both sides of the coin of the way that I look at it as well. And you know, there's interest rates going up. It's going to start putting pressure on a lot of people. And I know, you know, Mark was talking a lot about a lot of small business owners struggling and really struggling with these rates going through the roof and everything as well. But the big one that Tommy Panos was talking about, and it's so true, and we are literally witnessing it, especially like in all of our locations, is stock is just so tight at the moment. So like, if there was a bit of a glut of stock and there was a lot sitting around at the moment and we had to deal with that, and that was an issue, and there's a lot of people trying to sell, the market would be coming back in a big way. But as of right now, we're not witnessing that. And there isn't a huge glut coming to market. There isn't a huge pipeline of it coming to market. Maybe that'll change a bit later in the year. But for right now, and especially in the areas where we're really super active in, stock is as tight as it has ever been on record. You know, you look at some big cities that are out there at the moment. I'm not talking so much about your Sydney and your Melbournes, but you're looking at Brisbane, you're looking at Perth, even you're looking at Adelaide. Like at the moment, stock levels are super tight compared to long-term averages. That will keep a floor under house prices, and it will keep upward pressure on those pricings as well, because there are still people out there looking to buy. And with rents doing the run that they're running as well, at the moment, kind of the transition that we're seeing is really people who are getting priced out of rental side of things. Some of those guys are able to forward in the market down. So they'll go and actually buy in the market down rather than trying to keep getting pushed around on the rental side. So it's been a really interesting equation to watch. I don't think it's going to ease up anytime soon in terms of the pressure from a supply situation when it comes to, from a demand situation on supply with both rental and housing in most good areas. The big reason for that is obviously right now, And this is creating a lot of stimulus, right, around I'm talking about immigration. So the government's trying to curb inflation, but they're also massively stimulating the economy by allowing like a huge amount of additional population in.
That in turn 300,000 people, Sammy,
a year
annually.
A year, yeah. So like that extra pressure on rents and on the housing market, but also on the actual economy as well. It's great to kind of keep things ticking along on that end, but it's adding to the inflationary issue because there's more pressure there, putting more pressure on pricing for goods and services and rentals and whatnot as well. So it's.
And can we just stay on that point? Because a lot of people listening out there, they hear this about migration and all the people coming into the country, but it doesn't actually resonate. Like, can you just spell that out and for our listeners? So essentially, a lot of the skilled migrants that are coming into the country, so not a huge amount of refugees. So skilled migrants, they've spent a lot of money coming into the country. They've got a really good job. So essentially, they are taking a house. They need to live somewhere. So if you've already got an undersupplied market and you're bringing in 300,000 people into the market, they're taking housing off the market, which creates further tightening. Yeah. Right? Those people initially rent because they can't buy straight off the bat, right? Am I right?
Yes.
And then eventually they will buy. Let's just say it takes a couple of years to buy. So then they take another property out of the market. Right.
And the interesting point as well is a lot of the time they're not in your so a lot of the time they're not in your big cities. So a lot of the time they have to start in the regional locations before they can get PR, like permanent residency. And you look at cities like Perth and Adelaide there and even like your Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast, Wollongong's, like your big regional cities. And I know I just mentioned Perth and Adelaide. They aren't classified. They actually are classified as regional cities by that understanding. So yes, they are capital cities of that state. But in terms of what migrants can come and move into, a big shift, this is something that they did a few years ago to try and stimulate migration to their population nodes, which was allowed. So a lot of those big cities are, and big regional hubs are being smashed off the back of it, and it's pushing job vacancies to like record lows. Like a lot of these big regional cities are sitting in the 3 and 4% for job vacancies, which is ridiculously tight. So there's all these things. What that does is it puts pressure, for one, on the housing market, but for two, on inflation, because it's really pushing that as well, and that demand is there. It's not like people aren't going out and spending. So it's a really interesting time, and like a lot of people are bagging out the RBA and everything for it as well. But the issue is they have that one blunt instrument to try and curb it, and right now, like it's not working, and they did the one pause. A lot of house prices, there were actually quite a few markets out there that stalled at the start of this year of 2023. And the RBA did one pause and everyone was back in. It was just like confidence was back on. Market changed in a lot of these areas and bang, it sparked again. So, it was a little bit of a lesson to them and they didn't like it. And so, hence they've still been going on.
Okay. So are you saying that stock levels are super tight because despite interest rates going up, and people feeling the pinch, their affordability is such that they do not need to sell?
Because
otherwise.
So right now it is. The interesting situation that is going to unfold is when this, and they're talking about it like a cliff, but there are a lot of fixed rates that are going to be coming off in the next 6 to 12 months. A lot of the people fix for 2, 3, 4 years. The majority of the 2 years have already come off, and the threes, the 2s and the 3s will still be coming off over the next 12 months or so. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that equates when a lot of people are rolling off, 199s and in the 2s and everything, and rolling off their fixed rates.
Into 6s,
100%. It depends on where they're at to go into 7s, but probably not so much as if they're rolling off the 19s and the 2s and stuff. They're probably rolling into the around that 6%, which is triple their mortgage that they were on last month to then this month, sort of thing. So it's going to be interesting to watch that play out. But watch your space, guys. We'll give another update on it, as soon as different things change and go on as well.
Can I have one more question on that? Because I know we've got a lot to get through, but are we finding that price, because people listening to this are thinking in their head, well, should I wait? Should I wait until that mortgage cliff? Or should I get in now? Or because serviceability is tough, is the property price going to go down? So that's the confusion in the market right now. So The mortgage cliff, is that affecting the investment grade areas that you're buying for Australian Property Scout? Or is that more that high price point where people have leveraged the Sydney, Melbourne's, they got $1 million, 1.5. That's going to hurt.
Yeah, the most exposed areas will definitely be the most overvalued and where the affordability is shot. So definitely in your more expensive pockets, your more expensive cities. And even like the I guess the mortgage belt of the more expensive cities as well, which could be 1 to 2, maybe to 3 mil if we're talking Sydney and Melbourne, right? So they are areas that probably will be quite exposed. The rest of the country that are in more affordable sort of pockets, and just even if they're more expensive areas, but if they're in a more affordable city that hasn't had a ridiculous run yet, they are going to be more insulated than the areas that are sitting at, house prices are 15 times what the median income is of an area. They're going to be very exposed. So they're the areas to watch out for. The area, like pretty much all the other markets at the moment right now, stock is so tight, there is no way prices are going backwards. The really key thing is I honestly believe growth is still coming quite strongly in the next 12 to 24 months. I think when interest rates start getting clipped back down, probably in the next 18 months or so, I think that's going to be fuel on the fire. I think it's going to explode. Those guys sitting and waiting for the drop, I don't think it's going to come in the right markets. I 100% do not think it's coming in the correct markets where you should be investing. Don't think it's coming through in those ones. So I think trying to sit on the sidelines to time an entry in a 6 to 12 month window, I think you're going to miss 6 to 12 months worth of growth. I don't think that period's going to come. What I think we will witness is I think some people will be desperate to sell, and I think they'll sell quick and easy off market to us rather than go to market. But I don't think there's going to be enough of it that it causes a market comeback or a slowdown or a crash or anything. I just think it will be opportunistic moments to take advantage of to get some cracker deals.
Okay, well, you heard it there from the bull shark, ladies and gents. Bit of an update with the recent interest rate increase. So let's get on to some of your questions out there, folks. And the first one I'd love to ask you, Sammy boy. This is from Shawnee P. Good fella. Top fella, Shawnee P.
I do like Shawnee. He's a good fella.
Question. He says, I have 5 properties in the portfolio valued at 2.6 mil. And he's got debt of 1.5 mil.
Well done.
Sammy, you purchased the last 2 deals for Shawnee P.
Big Shawnee.
His main issue is that one property manager, these are his words, treats and speaks to me like I work for her. It's not Jackie's scheme.
It sounds like
it's not Jackie, is it?
Sounds like Jimmy with his mum.
My other two are great. He says, so how do I help her understand that she works for me and she'd be trying to make my life easier? What a cracker of a question, Shawnee P. Sammy, what would you do? How would you approach this one?
I would have a very direct conversation with her. So obviously, I kind of look at it like you kind of work in tandem, it's not so much like one party or the other works for each other. You kind of work together, right? Like really when it comes to this, it's a partnership, like you're working together on this thing. But if they're talking to you like shit, I would have put them into line straight away. And if they don't like it, fuck them off. That's as simple as it gets. Like you pull them into line straight away. You say, hey, come on. This is mutual, goes both ways here. You want to treat me with disrespect, I'll treat you like shit as well. So you put the foot on the other side there. I find a lot of the time being firm very early is what dictates the tempo of a relationship in especially in property management and in all aspects of real estate with this. How you react and how you move about this early is really going to dictate the tempo. So,
but is it worth understanding what exactly? I mean, it would be great to get a bit more context, but maybe
mate, we're not going. Do you want me to throw him on speaker? Right?
No. I'm just saying, maybe is she more like very pushy? Because that could be quite good when it comes to the tenant and controlling things. So he probably feels like, look at what the actual points are discussing. Is that worth thinking about? Because you obviously want to create a win-win situation. Yeah. So you don't want to have the power struggle going.
And that's what I mean. You got to, and that's why absolutely. I said, like, you've just got to look at it and you've got to have a chat to them about, hey, this has got to go both ways. Like, we need this to be an equal relationship where we're both happy here, and we're both on the same page. That's the easiest way to do it. And if they're a gun and they're guiding you on how to do it, if they're guiding you and they're doing everything good, you just don't like how they're talking to you about it. Like, ultimately, if they're doing the right job and everything's being done 100%, then it's maybe just take their lead and just let them take care of it if they want to. I know that's what I do with Jackie, because she tries to get a hold of me. I'm uncontactable. So now she just rents all, she just goes and does it herself, and I'm happy with it. So
yes. Okay. Gotcha. All right. Shawnee
case
P.
by case.
Hopefully that helps you out there. The first cab off the rank. All right. Thomas T. Hi, Sammy and Jimmy. I love the podcast. Haven't missed an episode so far.
Thank you, Thomas.
Long-time listener. But I do have a question for you. And this is actually a really good question.
Okay.
My parents, this is from Thomas, my parents are both 60 and one of them is unable to work. They have a primary place of residence with a mortgage and they have 2 investment properties. The 2 investment properties are negatively geared, but have good capital growth. They are living paycheck to paycheck and struggling.
Had good capital growth, or
sorry,
have had good capital growth.
Have had. So the properties seem to have increased.
Okay.
That's his words. They are living paycheck to paycheck and struggling a lot up until recently. So the situation has changed because they inherited around $600,000. And what Thomas wants to hear from you, Sammy, I'd like to hear your advice on what they should do to set themselves up for retirement with this, because I know otherwise they'll probably spend it on depreciating assets, and I'd really love for them to be able to retire early and not have to stress about money as they get older. So,
so
a few variables here.
Yeah, currently they're still working, but?
Still working, 100% still working, both 60. Actually, sorry, one of them is unable to work. So,
yes, and the other one's still working, and they're struggling. Okay.
Correct.
There's nothing else to the question. Yeah, that's it?
No. Primary place of residence, 2 investment properties, negatively geared. They've got 600K. They've had some good capital growth with those properties.
Beautiful. Okay, so as always, guys, for the whole app, as in general, and especially on this question, not financial advice. What I'll jump into is how I would look at this if I was helping my parents, okay? If that was scenario that they were looking at and the properties they have already had their capital growth, in my opinion, if these guys are 60 and they're one of them's already not working and the other one's probably getting close to retirement, then negatively geared properties and they've done their dash and they've had a great run of growth, I would be looking to sell them. So in my opinion, I don't hold properties forever. I don't look at growth properties and go, oh yeah, no worries, I'll hold it forever and it bleeds me forever. What's the actual point of that? If it's not providing income as you get further on, you can't live off equity. You can't eat equity. It doesn't buy you bread and milk and all the rest of it. So the way I would be looking to do it is I would look to clip those properties if the market has indeed peaked out or nearing the peak, or even if it's past the peak but it's had a great run. I would be looking to sell those 2 negatively geared deals down, and we need to start to look towards transitioning towards cash flow. Now, let's just say for argument's sake, which I think is probably a pretty realistic conversation, if they perform quite well, like you said they have, probably quite realistically are probably cashing out at least 250, 300 grand per property. It could be a lot more. We don't have the exact figures. But let's say we're cashing out 600, 300K a pop, and you've got a $600,000, you've got a $600,000 inheritance that's just come through as well. That's 1.2 mil. That's a lot of cash. You could leverage in at quite a low point on, say, 3 resi manufactured cash flow deals and then execute them in cash, so you could go and buy those deals. And I say 3 because you have enough cash to do 2 deals in cash and have a little bit left over, but you're probably only going to get yourself to maybe $60,000, $70,000 or something like that in terms of net cash flow. Whereas instead, if you did a third one and just took on a small amount of debt per deal, or even maybe bought one at an 80% LVR, which means you might borrow around $300,000 on a singular purchase, $300,000-$400,000, but then you might execute that in cash, and then you might go and buy and execute 2 others fully in cash as well. That is more than likely going to get you up towards around about 100,000 net passive from those 3 deals, even if you're just carrying that little bit of extra debt. That's the way that I would kind of flip it. There's a lot of variables here. We don't know what the goal is, but realistically, it sounds like they're nearing retirement age and they're kind of just wanting to set themselves up. This could be a really good, clean way to get themselves to 100,000 net passive realistically in the next 2 years. Probably somewhere between a 12 to 24 month period, they could get themselves to this position. And it is the way that I would potentially look to push it as well.
Their primary place of residence does have a mortgage though. So a lot of people would be tempted to try and down pay that so they'd be debt free.
Did you say how much was left on that?
He didn't say that, but let's just say there's a few $100,000 on the mortgage with that.
The other thing we don't have to take into the equation as well is super. So obviously, if they're 60, they've got super that they can access and put to work as well. So one of the things you could look at too. My first and foremost equation 2 deals, $60,000-$70,000 a year. In my opinion, it's not really enough. I wouldn't really be happy with that, like going into retirement. I would try and push the envelope with the 3rd deal and then worry about, if we know we can then draw down on our super and there's $500,000 in there, we can pay out the primary residence and maybe pay out a portion of the investment left, and go through a fair bit of debt reduction down that avenue. That's what I'd be looking at doing, because 3 deals like that over the long term is going to give you, even immediately, you're going to get a better return, because the cost on the debt to take it on will be very minimal in the scheme of things.
Yeah, because their argument could be, well, I've already got 2 investment properties. I might as well just pay down the debt of those and turn them from negative to positive and reduce. So what we're saying is the opportunity cost is that the manufacturer cash flow deals are going to get them a greater return for their capital.
Yes.
Just to clarify.
100%. Higher net return. And this is the thing, when you get to retirement age and when you get to that consolidation position, you want to be consolidating and owning high cash flow deals at the end. You want to be owning something that was like a 4 or 5% yield the whole way through. You want to own something that in today's dollars is like a 7.5%, 8% plus yield now, so that especially over time, especially that yield will grow as rents and everything grow as well. But you're getting multiple income streams on one title. You're getting that higher than average net return, which is super important. Yes. To paint a real clean, like just a little side picture here, but a little clean picture of what happens as well when rental growth comes in. I actually went through a few releases the other week with Jackie, actually, and we got some fresh lease renewals through. And I'd done this deal and it was sitting in the low 8% 2 years ago. We just went through rental increases. Now that deal's sitting at 12.5% as a yield in 2 years. So on purchase, it was around about 8.5, and now we're sitting at, it was a low 12% in terms of yield.
That's a really good point, because people, when they're doing these deals initially, it seems like they're not impressed with a 7.5% yield sometimes. But you realize that is in your acquisition. But in a few years' time, your cost base is obviously fixed, and you're increasing your rents. So
and
naturally,
over time, your debt will decrease as well.
Exactly.
So like you're getting this. Everything's working in your favor. So the debt, for one, the cost of debt and inflation will devalue debt as well, but all that is devaluing and costing you less, but your rents and prices and everything is moving up as well.
All right, Sammy. Thomas, hopefully you enjoyed that. Good answer. I like that one.
Smashing him out.
All right, Jeffy S. Well, it doesn't ring off the tongue very well. But Jeff, dear Sam, I'm a big fan of your podcasts. My question is about the drivers. The drivers of the property price booms. You've mentioned previously in your podcast that property prices in Sydney boomed in 2013 and peaked in 2017. Question, why did property prices boom in Sydney around this time? That's the first question. Okay. Was it simply because interest rates gradually decreased from 2011 to 2018, or are there other reasons? And also, why did Sydney property prices increase so much faster during that period than in any other markets such as Brisbane and Adelaide? Question.
Okay, so the simple answer around this, and obviously it is never fully simple, but like, why did it outperform the other cities? Because the others, like, all markets move in cycles and they all grow at different times. And typically what it comes down to, it's not so much around interest rates. Interest rates increases affordability. But if you look at the period of 2003 to 2013, Sydney and Melbourne did nothing. Right? They did literally next to nothing. If anything, they kind of came back in that 10-year window. So everyone likes to talk about Sydney's king in terms of growth, but so often people forget the decade before that it did nothing. And that's just normal. It's a normal market cycle. It's a normal market growth pattern. And in that 10-year dip where it did nothing, Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane, they all doubled. So like, what you got to look at is where markets are performing at different times and how far along their cycles are they. And so in terms of, and it's never a clear cut scenario. Oh, well, one's boom, so now I'll just go on to the next one. It's not exactly like that, because you got to pick which is the correct next one, because they all move at different times. Like you even look at the most recently, Adelaide started to run about 4 years ago. Brisbane started at about 3 and Perth started around about 18 to 24 months ago, right? So like they all move in different little cycles. If you time each market correctly and kind of stripped the equity from the first one, rolled onto the second before it went, you would have made a lot of money. I know we made a lot of money, Jimmy, out of exactly this. But going back to the exact question around that, with Sydney, it was, and this is where big booms happen, right? It's the perfect storm of everything coming together. So first and foremost, affordability was at a perfect point. So, you could buy property in Campbelltown and in Liverpool and Blacktown and areas like this, commutable distance back to Sydney for less than $300,000. For a house, house and land, literally for less than $300,000. The affordability of those markets at the time were insane, because you actually look at wages now compared to what they were 10 years ago, they're not that different, right? But property prices were significantly less. And so affordability was a huge factor in it. What you also find typically is when a market booms, developers develop a lot of product, land, townhouses, units, all these sorts of things. So what happens is by the time you get towards the end of the boom, a lot of that stock is coming on. And when that stock floods through, it slows the market down. And what happens is that would have happened in, say, early 2000s as well, when Sydney had its last boom. So much stock comes on, it creates a glut. When that glut sits there for a while as well, it forces the market into a slump of its own, because things have gotten to a frothy point. They're very expensive at that point. And the heat goes out of the market on that end, and that's where it kind of dips off. The affordability caps out, the heat goes out of it because a huge amount of supply, it goes down. What happens is, over the next 10 years, that exact scenario reverses. Affordability goes through the roof, and the supply slowly starts to tighten up as all that excess stock kind of gets picked up as well. That's just kind of like two pieces in the puzzle. There also was really good migratory figures into Sydney as well. It was a very popular city kind of around that time. There was a lot of huge projects going on and whatnot too. But the big factor is typically always around supply and demand and affordability. When you get that timing right, that's when you can really pick a market perfectly before it goes, or very soon before it goes as well. So a lot of different factors in that one, mate, to kind of unpack, but they're kind of your real kind of key things to really look for when you look back at Sydney and how it did. Yeah, I mean, it's the same as the writing on the wall before the others taking off as well.
All right. Beautiful answer, Sammy. Very comprehensive. Let's keep punching, because we've got a couple more to get through before we wrap things up. This one's from Callum. And Callum, his comment through the socials: "G'day guys, loving the podcast. Question for the Bull Shark. Two prolonged questions.
Ooh.
I'll throw a bit of Burleigh." He says, "I'll throw a bit of Burleigh in first."
Wow. Okay. Go on, Cal.
He knows the Bull Shark well. Sam, well, this one's got me a bit stumped. Congrats on the 31st property, mate. It's a 31. It's a bit late on that, isn't it?
You're a little behind, buddy. But,
a little bit behind. There's a tiny little bit more. However, question is, why have you only sold 2 properties in your time, having owned bulk properties for 10-ish years? The house market life cycle is roughly 5 to 8 years, is it not? First question. Do you want to answer that first, or do you want me to hit you with both of them?
What's the second? Go to the second.
Second one is, when would you look to start selling your properties and paying off debt in your cash flow deals, or cash in on markets that have done well in the past and reinvest into new up-and-coming suburbs?
Yeah, great question. So they do link.
They
tie in together. So the big thing with cashing out, so the 2 properties that I've sold have both been in Sydney. So in my opinion, when I sold out of those markets in Sydney, at the time, both markets were peaking out. I sold Wollongong unit in 2017. I sold another one of my houses in early 22, which was kind of before the COVID boom, like fully eased out. And it was the right time to sell both of those assets. The others, what you got to remember is I picked those up, especially Wollongong. I picked that up in 2009. So I sold that in 2017. So like I sold that at the peak of Sydney market and did well out of that. Same with the other Sydney one that I sold as well. In my opinion, that market never should have got to the point that it did. It got very expensive because of a COVID boom that kind of drove people there as well. It was the right time to exit that deal out of that market. All the others that I hold in Sydney are cash flow deals. All the other properties that I own across the board, spread between Queensland, WA, South Australia, the mix and the diversity that I've got across those markets haven't fully peaked out yet. So the opportune time to sell hasn't come. I definitely will sell bread and butters when they get to the peak of the cycle. I have no real need to sell my Brisbane property, so I probably will hold them a lot closer to the Olympic Games sort of, when that market gets a bit frothy from that, I'll probably look to cash out of my bread and butters around that time. But like I was saying, like there's some of my deals in Brisbane that are cash flow deals are now ranging between 12 to 15% yields. So like, yeah, I have no real need to sell those before the time's right. So
the question is, though, for you is, when you do come time to selling your bread and butter deals, and what Callum's saying is, would you use that to down pay the debt against your cash flow deals, or would you roll them into more bread and butter deals in up and coming markets?
Okay. Well, first question though was, why haven't I sold, right?
Yes.
Why haven't I sold more? So that's the reason why I haven't sold more. I've sold the ones out of Sydney that I needed to because the market peaked. The other ones, in my opinion, haven't peaked out yet.
Great.
and I'll be timing the exit when they do. The other question around that would be a mix. So I like to debt reduce the portfolio as I go as well, but I also obviously like to continue to acquire. I'm not that far off my goal with what I'm kind of chasing in terms of a net passive income goal. So I don't know how much more I probably will accumulate. I said this a year ago. I said it the year before that. I only really buy the shit that no one else wants to touch. So great deals will come through the business, but there'll be hectic renovators that's outside the scope of most of our guys. That's pretty much what I buy. So I never really have plans to buy things, but then, those sorts of deals come up. They're too good to pass, but they're too much risk for a client. So that's kind of what I accumulate, right?
Okay. So it's fair to say wherever you are in your cycle will depend whether you sell to down pay debt against your cash flow or if you're rolling it into more deals. So it's very much dependent on your cash position, how much savings you got, how much capital you got, where are you in your exit.
Yeah. So exit and that cash flow target are huge because they're the two things you kind of continually need to assess. But ultimately, you'll get to a point, and like I said, I'm not that far off it from a cash flow position. And then it's really just marrying up against the right amount of deals that would be able to fully down pay the debt that's against that as well. Okay. And so, that's pretty much what they go into. And it would be a mix of obviously between the cash flow and the.
And what is that cash flow? Is that something you'd want to share?
Target?
Yeah, or just what your target is, or is it?
Personal one.
Let's move on. So really, it is really dependent on your own situation, and you don't need to disclose that by any means. But for folks listening out there, this is all about you and your current circumstance. So, absolutely, you've answered that one, just not all of it.
Jimmy, give yourself an uppercut.
Next question from Jack. From Jack.
Jack.
Hey, Jack, Sammy mentioned a discount for first-time customers the other week on the Q&A 5. Just wondering, what is the discount? What might it be, and how long will it go?
Okay, guys, so just to be clear on this as well, right? So the discount essentially we were offering it. Essentially, if you bring up the discount, and now it's being said again. Now it was said again back then. The discount is it's a 10% discount, right, off your full BA fee. Just to be super, super clear on this, because heaps of people reached out and they were being a bit cheeky because it's my first time using a buyer's agent or it's my first investment. Guys, it's the first deal you've ever done. So the whole reason I did it was because we were talking about guys starting on a very, very low income. I can't remember the fella's name.
He was scrapping for his deposit, right?
He was great. He was at like 50K, and man, I can definitely
empathize with these kind of
exactly, man. Empathize around those situations. So look, the idea really is to help these at whatever stage you are in life, whether you're young or you're old or whatever, but you're trying to scrap together your deposit for your first property, whether it's your home, whatever. Nothing else before has been bought. Essentially, I'm just trying to help those guys get into the game and just offer them a little bit of a clip off so they can.
First deal ever. You can't own your primary place of residence and then want to invest. It's your first deal ever.
Well, you can, but just the scenario that the little discount is just to try and help the first timers never bought before to get in.
And you know what? A lot of people have brought this up as well. And if you are, guys, the discount shouldn't be the make or break whether you do a deal. Because if you're thinking about trying to save a small margin and you're failing to see what the value of actually what you're trying to achieve in your portfolio, you're looking at the wrong thing. So just keep that in the context.
Best BAs in the market, we'll put you guys above everything else. We're not a high volume tick and flick sort of organization. Obviously, we're trying to help you guys do the best we can. This is our little way of trying to give back and help these guys get into their first deal.
Well, I think we've nailed all the questions, Sammy boy.
Jimmy,
you've got something else to say. I've got one comment from Paul and Mandy that I'd like to share with you, though, before you do wrap things up. And I thought this was quite poignant because it was quite relevant to a podcast we did recently. Okay. Hi, APS team. This is from the guys. I just listened to Morgan's story on the Scouting Australia podcast.
Yes.
Loved hearing about a young woman's success story. So inspiring. Awesome stuff. I was particularly motivated by her ability to build a portfolio of 4 to 5 properties within such a short time period and with starting out on a relatively low income.
Well done, Morgan.
This is Mandy. Paul and I are currently stuck on 3 properties due to the banks not lending until I return back to work from maternity leave, which will be in the next couple of months. Interest rate increases have not helped our serviceability, understandably. However, she's saying, not wanting to limit our opportunities or waste time, we secured private funding and are now finally embarking on building a granny on our Perth property, which we will get financed as soon as we can to pull the money back out, and then we can also get right back into our next APS deal. So with that said, you will hear from us again in a couple of months. So we're going to keep accumulating on the property horse. Keep up the podcast, and please do include more stories from women and families. So I thought that was a nice way to finish the segment, because it is just great to see a couple. They've got some inspiration. They're taking action. And what I was impressed with is that they've found a way to overcome their current problems to keep the ball moving.
Yes. You know, it's a really funny situation, Jimmy, was in COVID, man. I had to go to private lending to get a build completed of my own, because all the development funding that I needed got cut when I was during COVID because of everything that was going on then. So development funding got cut. So I had to settle a block of dirt in cash and then build it with private funding. And sometimes, man, you got to do what you got to do, and then you refi it out when you're done and the serviceability comes back through. So yeah, man, it's a great point, and it's a great shout out to obviously Morgs for the app that she did as well. Full power to the ladies. I know there's a couple other girls that we're looking to get on soon as well that have done really well, and they're out there having a crack. Yes. Which is great to see. So yeah,
keep
super
writing
inspiring.
in, folks. Keep writing in.
That's it, 100%, guys. So thanks for the writing, guys, and glad we're inspiring you guys on your journey as well.
So I think that's it, Sammy boy, from my end. All those questions answered. Keep your questions coming in, folks. We want to hear from you. Sorry for the people that we didn't get through today, but we're trying to keep these short and punchy. But every single month, we'll tackle some Q&As for you.
100%. Jimmy, mate, thank you for jumping on as always, buddy. Listeners, thank you very much for coming on, listening once again to the Scouting Australia podcast. I hope you took some great value out of it. If there's any of those questions that you think are super relevant to anyone that you might know, anyone in your circle that it may be able to help, as always, please send it on. We want to keep trying to build your circle of influence of people thinking, a like-minded fashion, investing in the same way, obviously that we do, and thinking the same way that we do. So, yeah, please send it on, guys. And as always, if you haven't left us a 5-star review yet, guys, I think we're about 3 or 4 reviews away from 200 bloody reviews, and we've only been running for about 5 months. So massive thank you to you guys. And if there's any of you that haven't left us a review yet, please make sure you jump on there and leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us. It helps keep building our audience as well. So thank you very much. Once again, guys, thank you to the big silver dog himself. And until next week, guys, another Q&A with Big Jimmy Ibrahim. Thank you, guys. Have a great week.